And so this is a crazy story. Here's a crazy story from Georgetown law. According to the Washington Post, a Georgetown law professor was terminated, and a second was placed on leave after a video clip showed a conversation between the pair that included what an official called reprehensible statements about black students. Officials said Thursday, the conversation between adjunct professors Sandra Sellers and David Batson had triggered an investigation by Georgetown University's Office of Institutional Diversity, Equity, and Affirmative Action, which is an Orwellian title for an office that basically exists just to punish people for saying the wrong things. And there's an entire billion-dollar industry in the United States, offices of diversity at virtually every company designed to avoid liability. That's really what those are about. You can limit your liability and exposure to federal lawsuit if you have an office of diversity that polices inside your institution, quote unquote racism, even if it's not actually racism. The school's Black Law Students Association had called for Sellers' firing. The video clip, shared on Twitter this week, showed Sellers discussing student performance. Sellers said in the video, quote, "I hate to say this. I end up having this angst every semester that a lot of my lower ones are blacks," meaning a lot of my lower performing students. Happens almost every semester. And it's like, oh, come on. You get some really good ones, but there are also usually some that are just plain at the bottom. It drives me crazy. Okay, now, the way this was interpreted is that black students are inherently dumber. That is not at all what the professor is obviously saying. The professor is saying that one of the problems with lowering standards of admission to have affirmative action people, to have people get in via affirmative action means that you're going to have people who are misaligned with the school. This has been a long supported thesis. Abigail Thernstrom wrote about this years ago in The Atlantic, when The Atlantic was not a left-wing garbage salon knockoff. Okay, it used to be that everybody understood that if you lower standards for admission, a lot of the people who would have done really well at a school not as highly ranked as Georgetown actually underperform at schools like Georgetown because they got in having lower scores than the rest of the population at these particular schools. So this professor says some of my best performing students are black, but a disproportionate number of my lower performing students are black, and this makes me sad. This makes me upset. Not sad at the black students, sad at a system that does not help black students to the extent that they are performing better. Sad at a system that is deliberately misaligning a certain number of black students with the school they should actually be going to. They'd be succeeding at a school that is not ranked in the top 20 law schools. They'd be succeeding at school number 40. But at Georgetown Law, they're having a tough time, and this makes the professor sad. This is fireable. If you even note that black students are disproportionately underperforming at some of these schools, which statistically they are, this means that you are racist. And if you're sad about it, you're upset about it, you want black students to do better, this means that you're even more of a racist, according to Georgetown Law. Law Center Dean William Traynor said Thursday he informed Sellers she was terminated and that she had indicated she had planned to resign. Batson was placed on administrative leave pending the investigation, Traynor said. The dean said the incident underscores the school's need for more anti-bias training. There it is. All you have to do is pour a few billion more dollars into the Office of Diversity to re-indoctrinate everybody into the idea that you can't have any standards at all, and then all of this will go away. By the way, if Georgetown Law really wants to fix this problem, they should just get rid of grades. All grades should just go away. No more grades. Not even pass-fail. It's impossible to fail. Everybody, it should be like a Baltimore public school. You get passed whether or not you actually know how to read. He said officials are taking steps to ensure that students in Sellers and Batson's class are graded fairly. She wasn't saying that she was deliberately grading down black students. Precisely the opposite. She was saying that if she could have had the ability to do so, she would have graded black students better, but it's a problem because they're not performing as well. Sellers shared a resignation with the Washington Post in which she apologized for the hurtful and misdirected remarks that were part of a longer discussion about patterns in class participation. I would never do anything to intentionally hurt my students or Georgetown Law and wish I could take back my words, Sellers said in the letter. Regardless of my intent, I've done irreparable harm, and I'm truly sorry for this. No, you didn't. You didn't do irreparable harm at all. Not one iota of irreparable harm. The only irreparable harm here is that Sellers is never going to work in academia again. Because any school in the future that hires this particular professor is immediately going to be hit with a wave of woke cancellation. They're going to be hit with a bunch of students claiming that they are going to protest at the dean's office if this professor is hired. She just ended her own academic career by apologizing. She never should have done it. She should have just said, that's not what I meant. Y'all know what I meant. I want black students to do well. That was the entire basis of the conversation. No. Then she'd be able to work again. But just like everybody who's intimidated, she put her neck out there and they're going to chop it right off. Apparently, this is pretty great. Tiffany Wright, a former Supreme Court law clerk who graduated from Georgetown Law in 2013, they dug this person up to comment for the Washington Post, said she's been dealing with the kind of microaggressions espoused by Sellers since she was a student. She's used to people doubting her abilities and seeing black people held to different standards than their white peers. Quote, it also has an effect over time on our mental health. You start to absorb and believe those lies. Which ones? She said some of her best performing students are black. So which lies are you believing? The lie that says that some perform well and some perform badly? Because that's true of every racial group. or the truth, which is that sometimes racial groups disproportionately perform well or badly in particular academic settings. It's an absurdity, but it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Traynor, who's the dean, said he had learned this week about a conversation between two faculty members that included reprehensible statements concerning the evaluation of black students. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. It's a deliberate misinterpretation of what is very obviously a sympathetic position toward black students.